A small message from me before we kick off with today's video. iDriveAclassic is proud to be sponsored and insured by Adrian Flux. If you haven't heard of Adrian Flux before, they're the UK's leading specialist motor insurance broker, covering everything from classic and vintage cars right through to heavily modified sports cars. So whether you're in a Morris Marina, a 90s retro runabout, or something with a bit more oomph under the bonnet, give them a call for your next policy. I've popped a link to their site in the description box below. Hi guys, it's Steph from idriveaclassic and I'm back in my flowery overalls for the second episode of Tinkering Tuesdays. Bizarrely, for a British bank holiday, it's actually sunny today, so I've got my sunglasses on. Now, there are two things that we're going to get done in today's video. So number one is we're taking the engine to an engine builder's. Now, I know a lot of people are going to think that I'm kind of wimping out, but I think one of the greatest things about doing something like this is recognizing your limitations. And having lost a bit of confidence with everything that happened when the engine seized, I thought I'm actually going to enlist the help of an expert. So we've taken the engine out, we're going to be visiting the engine builders first, and then I'm going to talk to you about some of the engine bay prep. So we're going to do a bit of engine bay prepping today, and then next week we'll do the full engine bay prep, and we're also going to talk about that rusty wing that you guys keep commenting on. So first of all, let's head over to the engine builders and catch up with Mark. As somebody who grew up on a farm, there are some real childhood vibes about Mark's workshop because, of course, I think the building was built in about 1920 or so, and it used to be a stable block. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to ask Mark if I can show you guys around a little bit, because things, it is Mark's space, but we'll try and twist his arm because there's some really interesting stuff in here, and I think for people that maybe remember how garages used to be are going to really love Mark's setup in here, because there really is nothing else like this place and I want to show you. But first of all, we need to go and grab Mark because I want him to talk to us about what he's going to do to this engine, because Mark is a man who really knows his stuff. So we're going to get him to explain it because there's no one better to do it. So we'll see if he's in.
Hey.
That was a bit forceful.
Hey guys. Hi, I'm Mark. I've got the dubious job of looking at this Marina engine for Steph, and we better go and see what it's all about. But before we go through there, I'll just run through what I'm doing at the moment. I've got 2 or 3 jobs on the bench. Some H4 carburetors off my own MG T-type, which I'm just rebuilding. They're very badly worn. Spindles and the bushes, so we're going to put new bushes and spindles into those. That's an ultrasonic cleaned one. This is one that's not yet been cleaned. Also MG TC cylinder block here for a rebuild, and then the other job I've got on the go at the moment is a Lotus Cortina gearbox rebuild. I love doing gearboxes for my sins. So Steph, I think we should go and look at this engine of yours and see what damage has been done. Steph, this engine, you say it's seized. I suspect it's seized because it's had an oil starvation problem, and the most common cause of that is if the oil gauze, the pickup gauze, has got blocked over a period of time. It's started to suffer and suffer and suffer, and eventually it's got to the stage where it just can't pull any more up to the engine, and in normal use it's just gone dry. It's just run the engine dry. So what we'll have to do is we'll strip it. We'll inspect every component, and any worn component or damaged component obviously will need replacing. And we'll do a fresh engine around what you would like. Why not take the opportunity now, while we've got the engine down, in develop it slightly. These engines, these 1275 engines, A-series engines, are so tunable, and there's everybody supplying bits and pieces for them. The trick is getting the right combination of bits. It's all right bolting bits and pieces on, but it doesn't always work. So you've got to get the right complement of bits. What I would suggest to keep with modern traffic is a lightly modified. We're not looking for super horsepower. These are 60 horsepower in its standard form. We don't want a lot more than that, but maybe a little bit more torque will give you drivability. We can gain torque by a little bit of cylinder head modification, a slightly improved camshaft. To get the SW5 or any modified camshaft to work properly, a decent compression ratio needs to be attained. So we'd look at lifting the compression ratio up to about 10.3 to 1, which is perfect for that camshaft. To do that, new pistons with a smaller combustion bowl in them will work. Probably going to have to bore the engine anyway because it's seized, so there's a good opportunity there. And a little bit of head work, but not too much. Again, you know, people go over the top and then they make them undrivable. You don't want that. You use this as your daily car. You want it drivable, but you want it drivable with a little bit more go than perhaps it had initially. So we can do all that. We can go further. We can balance it. We can do lots of little bits and pieces. But really, for what you're doing and the budget that you've got, your budget doesn't sort of run to building a highly tuned engine, but it does give you enough to develop it slightly and to build you a nice fresh engine for your enjoyment.
Quite frequently you hear people talk about how workshops and garages just don't look like they used to. And there are loads of pictures that float around online, and when I walked into Mark's workshop, I felt like I was stepping back in time. This is probably the sort of workshop that cars like mine saw on their first rodeo. So I said to Mark, not only can you tell me how to rebuild my engine and explain everything to me and tell me why we're doing certain things, but can you let me film your workspace as well? So remember, Mark is retired and he just does little odd bits and pieces to keep his mind going. And he said to me, of course you can. And he was so generous and so humble with sharing his space and letting us see it. And I thought, let's preserve this on film. So as many of you know, I'm really big on preserving history, whether that's photography or film, and showing you spaces like this, because I truly believe that when we see things like this and spaces like this, we need to preserve it on film, because in 30 or 40 years' time, stuff like this will just be a memory. And I saw it and I walked in and it was just incredible. And I feel like even watching this footage back, and I've shot it a million different ways to show you, it doesn't do justice to the space. It's the smell, it's everything. These two cars were just sat in the middle of the workshop. And for me, it was incredible because these were old stables that Mark's taken and he's turned into a workspace. So he's got all his tooling, he's got all his bits and pieces, his machinery, his equipment. But these weren't the only cars that he had. So in just a second, I'm going to show you where the rest were, because I said, these are fantastic. And he said, that isn't all I've got. So with no further ado, I'm going to show you the rest of these cars. So there was a big polytunnel outside, and this is part of Mark's private collection. And these are cars that you don't see every day, because whilst it's really exciting to see a few minis or a few Morris Minors somewhere, it's truly something else when you go and visit somebody and they're really generous and let you see their collection, they let you go and investigate it, and most importantly film it as well. And one of the most interesting things for me was that Mark lived in Australia for a while, and when he came back he actually brought some of these cars back with him. So the Land Rover at the back, I believe, was one of them, but don't quote me on that. And the other really interesting thing was when Mark lived in Australia, he actually was friends and I think worked with one of my friends from the Morris Minor Owner Club in Australia, which truly shows you that if you think the world of cars is small in the UK, the world of cars nationwide is clearly a lot smaller than we think it is. So yes, this is a bit of a snapshot on what Mark has got, where Mark is working, and where we're going to see this engine transformed. But enough from us here today. Let's go back to Morris Marina HQ and crack on with all those other bits that we need to get done. We've dropped the engine up at Mark's and we're expecting that back probably next week or the week after, but whilst that's out, I thought this was a golden opportunity to sort out this engine bay, because let's be honest, it looks, well, awful. It looks even worse now that the engine is out and I can see everything. So I thought, you know what, let's take this opportunity to take a few bits off, get them powder coated up. I've taken all the brackets and a couple of bits like the engine mounts and stuff off the engine because I wanted to get those all sorted as well. I've taken things like the fan off for cleaning, just various bits, because I think if we're going to be doing this engine, we might as well make this engine bay look as good as it can, because I don't think it's actually going to take that much effort or that much money. So the first thing, of course, is I need to get all of this stuff stripped off. So let me show you what I'm going to take off. Now, one of the hidden things that I wanted to make sure that I got when we did the engine bay and making sure that it was right was this panel behind the washer fluid bottle. So I took that off, and as you can see, this is fixed down with screws. But what I didn't realise afterwards is it's also bonded down to the body. So to get this off, I took all the screws out, and then I basically jimmied it off the engine bay, and I put that in the box to get that all powder coated up as well, because if I'm already getting everything else done, it seems a little bit naff to just shove that water bottle back on and to forget about it. So I've popped that in the box too. Taking that engine bay from good to better to best is all about the finer details. And one of those finer details for me was this wiper motor. So on the top of your wiper motor, on top of like that lid, that circular piece, is printed the month and the year of manufacture. So that usually roughly correlates with when the car was made. And this one is stamped, and the stamp on the top would suggest that this is the original wiper motor for the car. So I could do the easy route here, where I buy a unit, I exchange it, and I have some shiny new wiper motor. But actually what I'm going to do is get the outside of this one reconditioned. So first of all, I got this lid off, and then what you have to do is there's a little, can you see that little black, it's almost like a U-shaped clip. So what I'm going to do is pop that to one side, and I'm going to show you how we get this U-shaped clip out, which is really, really difficult. So you get the screwdriver and essentially just pop this up. But you have to be really careful because it almost feels a little bit spring-loaded. So when you're getting that out, just be really, really careful. But I wanted to show you. So once that's out, that will pop off. And then you can see, just take that out and you pop this arm up. Let me just show you there. Sorry, it's very fiddly. Just kind of pushes up. There you go. Can you see? You pull that out, and that then leaves this free, so that can come off. So just pull that out of the holder there, and what we'll do is when we send that off, we'll take that away. Now before I unplug this, it is worth noting I photographed it, because when I plug it all back in, I need to just remember where everything is. I must be mad doing this on a bank holiday when everybody else is down at the beach. But anyway, we've got all the bits and pieces off, so it's like the stuff you saw me take off today, bits and pieces that I took off when I was getting the engine ready to take it down to Mark. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with these? Shall I paint? Shall I powder coat? And when I was talking to a few people, everybody said, use ADO equipment in Halifax. They're great. They'll powder coat everything up. And the weirdest thing is I already know them. So if you've watched a lot of my videos before, you'll know that they've provided a lot of my spares for my A-series cars. They tend to specialise in minis, but they also do this powder coating service. And I thought, well, if I already know them, I might as well get it done, and they can do it quite quickly as well, which is great. So we're going to take this off to the team up there now, and hopefully they can show us some examples they've already done and tell us a little bit about the service. With current restrictions in place at time of filming, I did ring ahead to check the ADO team in today, and today we're meeting Clive.
Hi, my name's Clive. I'm with ADO Equipment in Halifax, Yorkshire in England. We specialise in providing parts for classic BMC cars. We can supply new old stock, and we also supply refurbished parts. That is becoming very popular. Not only is it recycling the elements of a car, but it provides the authenticity to a car. A lot of people might buy new bits to put on, which is fine, but often the quality isn't as good as the old. And also you may have a car with a particular authenticity and you want to maintain that. So keeping the part of the car, refurbishing it and putting it back on, keeps that car as close to its originality as possible. Some things might even be date stamped, so your car might be specific for a date stamped car like a Mark I Mini or something like that, where it's really important in order to have the quality and even the value of the car by having the original bits to it. So we can supply those. We can supply, for instance, carburetors made up. We can provide a whole system of suspension parts refurbished and ready to fit, and do a lot of the hard work which some people may not want to do or have the ability to do. Well, Steph contacted us earlier and she's left some parts from her project, and let's see what she's brought us. This is a typical bundle of pieces that someone might bring. Well, a fan. Well, this is a plastic fan, but that'll go in our paraffin bath. Give a good old clean. We have special products which will clean grease and elements like that. A pulley. Now this is a typical case of how we can get that blasted and powder coated. In fact, here's one typically which should look like when it comes back from the powder coaters. We have here a whole mixture of brackets. These will be blasted and powder coated in black, and these will look very similar to this piece here. So they can look as if they're brand new, but it's the original part, it's the original specification, thickness and detail that the original car needed. How better can you get from that? Other elements that we've done is typical rocker cover. How often that they get dinted, they get rusted, covered with oil, the paint goes. We can have them powder coated, and we can even powder coat them to various colors. So that'll depend on which car, which engine that you prefer. The wiper motor. Now this can be really, you can see this in the engine bay, so it could be quite nice to get this really sort of smartened up. We've had this done before. In fact, there's one here which is ready to go back to a client, virtually as new, but it's the original. This one even has the date stamp on, so that will go onto the original car. And there's all various little bits and pieces. Distributor bracket. We can have that re-zinced. In fact, here's one there, ready to go. This just makes the car, the engine, when you open that bonnet, just superb. And again, using the original parts. So if anybody has any questions, you can say, this is the original car. How great is that? So we'll put this to one side. We'll get this off. Some of these we'll clean ourselves. Some we'll get off to the powder coaters and to the zinkers, and we'll give Steph a ring as soon as it's back in a few days' time.
It's a bit of a funny one. So today on Tinkering Tuesdays, we haven't really done that much tinkering, but I wanted to show you the places that I'm visiting in between, because for me, seeing some of these cars and these workplaces is such an experience in itself. And I think it's a garage world that many people don't get to see anymore, and I wanted to share it with you, plus all the cool cars I'd seen as well, because that was a real highlight for me today. So I guess the next job that we'll be doing next week on Tinkering Tuesdays is getting that engine bay sorted, because then the week after, the engine is coming back, and let me tell you now, I cannot wait. So I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Next week I do promise we're going to have a lot more tinkering, a lot more hands-on, but I just wanted to show you those places we visited today. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and hopefully the weather will hold out for next week. So until next time, take care and drive safely.